listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Hey, Bruce Kneeland, you're part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I am proud to have you here. Never get a chance to just sit down and talk with you because you're so busy and I'm so busy. You had your 12th road trip where you were on the road visiting pharmacists throughout the nation. Your podcast is going absolute gangbusters crazy. You're on your 30th episode that you just put out. Wonderful episode called Growing Your Pharmacy's Profitability and Becoming an Accredited or Certified with the one and only Sandy Canali. But welcome to our collective show now. We're actually calling it the This Week in Pharmacy, but I don't have a place to put it today, so it's just going to go out as a Pharmacy Podcast Network episode. But it's good to talk to you, Bruce.
Well, and it's good to be with you, and as we self-congratulate each other, I just want to say again what a marvelous thing you have created in the Pharmacy Podcast Network. And 10, 11 years ago, you couldn't have imagined what you've accomplished, and it's you've made an awful lot of friends in the industry and created a remarkable reputation. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. You and I have roots into each other as publishers, and some of my writings got pushed out through different blogs that I was writing back in my soft writers days. And I was a avid reader of Computer Talk, and you were a participant there. And that's when I learned about Bruce Kneeland. And you've been one of those publishing heroes that I've had, that I've said, hey, you know what? Bruce has done things in publishing in the world of community pharmacy and pharmacy in general that I really wanted to expand into audio. And that's why I was so excited that you joined the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and seeing Pharmacy Crossroads blow up and what it's become, the number one podcast in our community pharmacy focus. And the reason is because you're good at what you do, and you're trustworthy, and you're extremely sincere as to what you're talking about. And that's something that I admire. So appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Let me remind you, you're talking to Bruce Kneeland. So you might have had me confused with somebody else there for a minute, but let's proceed. So, yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the evolution of what you're doing. And also I want to talk to you about the 7 secrets of successful pharmacy owners, and the paper and the article that you're going to be putting out later. But let's return to what is the subject of all of our conversations, and that is community pharmacy. You've been in the marketplace for quite some time. You've seen pharmacy change multiple times in the variations that have become. In some ways, I think the next variation of community pharmacy is in some ways the most difficult, but it's also the building of what I call the new age of pharmacy into transforming our pharmacists from dispensing people and assuring the health of our public, which is obviously still not job number one, to becoming the clinician, to becoming the practitioner in their community, of doing other things that have nothing to do with the prescription. But before we get into that conversation, I really just wanted to get an overview of how you're feeling right now about where community pharmacy is going. And you're just an encyclopedia of information when it comes to community pharmacy success. So,
that's a difficult question, but I certainly have. One of my favorite quotes is attributed to Yogi Berra, the baseball player, and it says you can observe a lot just by watching. And I think that's the role I play in pharmacy. Is I'm not a player, I'm an observer, but I get to watch a lot. And it's clear. The thing that I'm comfortable saying is that the pharmacy profession needs to start viewing itself as healthcare professionals with expertise in medications. I am one who believes that the pharmacy of the future, the pharmacy of today, needs to own the physical handling of the medications. But they need to, and everybody knows they need to. And the beauty of it is there's 10, 15, 20 directions they can go and stay healthcare professionals. And the classic ones are certainly compounding or infusion, but this whole new medical home piece where you can help take care of people in their home. You interviewed somebody the other day who 5 years ago, I wrote an article for Drug Topics about how these home instead and happier at home franchise businesses that are out there are looking for business people to buy a franchise who might be able to succeed. And that's a business that belongs in a pharmacy. So if it has to do with helping people feel better and live healthier lives, a pharmacy has an opportunity to participate in that. And that means, and on my last road trip, Michelle Belcher, the immediate past president of NCPA, what a wonderful lady. She's telling me that, as she talks with people, they keep saying, well, that means we have to do different stuff. We have to walk away from our computer and do something else, or this won't work on our pharmacy computer. And she came up, says, if you want to get paid different, you got to do different. And so healthcare is growing, and it's a wonderful opportunity, and it belongs in a pharmacy. People can get to the pharmacy easier than they can get anywhere else. So the future is bright if they change, and change how. We're still struggling with what that is. The problem is that the skills it takes to move forward are people skills. And traditionally, pharmacists are not known for being people. They're known for being detail people. That's the challenge. We got to change the outlook of the pharmacist on who he is.
It's a good point. And I see point of care testing and consultancy at employer groups, the representation of pharmacy in human resources and organizations that are part of communities, reaching out to the pharmacist for advice and for guidance. That's always been part of community pharmacy, but now it needs to be payable. And it needs to be transactional, and they need to be able to tie it back to, without interrupting the intimacy between the patient and the pharmacist, they have to get paid for doing these things so that we can move away from the hostage that is the PBMs and the current way that things are working. And rather than thinking of that as the primary, I want it to become a secondary argument, and we'll continue to fight for PBM reform, and we'll continue to fight for how we're compensating the assurance of the safety of the prescription. But as you're saying, there are other things that pharmacists are already doing and could be doing and added into the services that they're providing their community, seeing their patients 9 times that the physician is.
And we're seeing pharmacists do those kinds of things. So I had a boss one time who used to say it only takes growing one black rose to prove that you can grow black roses. And the point is we've got hundreds of pharmacists who are doing stuff that nobody ever thought of and making it happen. And the challenge, I think, for NCPA or the group purchasing organizations is to find these guys and roll programs together around them and teach other people to do that stuff.
Another aspect, and this is tough love, is the fact that many of our national associations who are subject matter experts in one facet of pharmacy traditionally have not worked together very well. And the APHA 2 years ago started this bridge building between multiple national organizations that had focus around community, around specialty, around senior care. And they literally started building some amazing bridges. They still are, but there's still a lot of that needs to, the CEOs of these big organizations, the ASHP, for example, mid-year's coming up here just this week and next week. Though that organization right there, as gargantuan and as big and as profitable as they are, they need to understand that they're part of this bigger universe of pharmacy care, and they need to stop with this moat around their castle. And they need to start lowering those drawbridges to every facet of healthcare, including other sectors of pharmacy, so that when your patient is in the hospital, it's seamless when they go to their homes, that the community pharmacy picks up the baton, implements happier at home to actually care for the patient, and starts to assure that the treatment plans that were put in place by the physician at the hospital in an emergency care situation are followed through. And they say they do it, but I just experienced something within the last 2 weeks that shows me that it's not part of their soul as an organization to be collaborative. They're still keeping their marbles and their pieces of whatever control that they think, and they're a sandbox to themselves. And that's very frustrating as another observer, because I'm like you, I'm not a pharmacist. I'm an observer. I'm a document guy. I like to show the progression of different facets of pharmacy. And of course, we like to do that through podcasting, but I'm standing back on the sidelines watching the players on the field, and I'm like, wait a second, that community pharmacist is wide open, quarterback. Why aren't you throwing the ball to him?
Yeah. Well, and it just dawns on me sitting here, looking at you with your logo behind you, the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I mean, you have podcasters in literally every avenue of pharmacy, no matter what their practice setting. So you kind of are the glue that can pull this together. So that's a great vision for you to grow.
I hope so. I think with our educational lead and our push out of content that is true education and continuing education, I think we can gather together the different sectors of pharmacy and kind of try to blend them together as much as we can. I know that subject matter expertise is important, but when it comes back to it, who's the most important person in healthcare? It's our patient. That's the most important person in the entire healthcare ecosystem. And the organization that has more touch with those people ongoing are our community pharmacists. So, and that's just what I believe. And I guess we could make it another podcast to argue that point later. But let's talk about the 7 secrets of successful pharmacy owners, because as a document and journalist and a writer, you have 12 trips out in the world of our nation collecting stories of community pharmacists. I want our community pharmacists to listen in and gather this wisdom from you. And what are the 7 secrets of successful pharmacy owners?
Well, let me give you the foundation. So, I mean, there's obviously 100 secrets of successful pharmacists, but I've tried to take and step back through. I've done 12 of these road trips now. It adds up to a little over 120 pharmacies that I have visited by nomination, pre-selection, and by appointment. And I think there's sometimes when I talk about being the road trip guy, people think I just get in a car and wander off someplace, but it's never been that simple. It's a process of, talking with people who are in a specific geographic area, having them recommend pharmacists that are doing things that are remarkable. And then, I can't visit 5 guys who are doing remarkable things with nutritional supplements. I got to find people who are doing remarkable things in different areas. And it's a wonderful experience when you go to a pharmacy by appointment. They've agreed to meet with me. They know they're going to spend 2-3 hours with me. And they know I'm not there to sell anything. So I'm there to ask questions. How did you find out this? Where'd you come up with this idea? How's it working for you? And it's been a wonderful experience. So as I sat down, a couple months ago to kind of think about how do I put a capstone on these road trips, I thought I wanted to write an article, and now you're kind enough to talk to me about it. But I've distilled it into 7 secrets, and I'll just jump in and tell you what the first one is. And I think it's the most important one, and it's the one that I think most of our pharmacy owners don't stop to realize, and that's have a noble cause. Have a purpose, have a vision for something that you're doing that's bigger than you, that's more important than money. It's the big vision. And the way I have tried to illustrate the power of that in some of the CE programs I've chatted in the past is to talk about the United States Marine Corps. A few good men. Uncle Sam wants you. And the point being is that the United States military has for 200 and some odd years now been able to persuade people to join and to go off and fight in foreign lands, to eat crummy food, to sleep in foxholes, and be bossed around and make lousy pay for doing it. And they get them to do it because we believe that we're doing something that's noble. And, in this great resignation or this great quiet quitting or this tough time we have hiring people and keeping them, we need to recognize that we need to look for people who can be persuaded that what they're doing is more important than their wage. We're helping people live happier, healthier, more productive lives. We're saving people. So all of that stuff that we do around healthcare that, right now is clearly focused on the pills in the bottle, is important. It matters. And if we can get people to understand and visualize that, we still need to pay good wages. We still need to be nice people to work for, all those things, but we can get a little bit more from our people than somebody can who's, running the McDonald's restaurant down at the street corner that's competing with you on wages. So it's a healthcare professional job, and people respect that. It's a respected career opportunity. So first one is to have a noble cause, and that's going to take some thinking to figure out how you articulate that. And we'll talk about the importance of articulation when I get to a couple of the other points. Ready to build the next one that flows out of that?
Absolutely.
So you got to build a team. And any football coach or baseball coach or drill sergeant knows that you need to get the people to cooperate, to coordinate. You need to have people who are experts in different areas. You have to have some fun. You have to be able to tap into the community and have a sense of pride in your town and your community. You need to hire right. And when we're panicked to get somebody to come to work, we often stop too short of making sure that we're finding the right person. And, I've seen people, I just visited one of the pharmacies in Reno on this most recent road trip. And then the first thing that jumped out at me when I walked in the pharmacy was right along the pharmacy counter was their 3 awards for being selected as one of the top places to work in Reno the last 3 years in a row. And that doesn't happen by accident. After I saw those awards, I was greeted by the owner who invited me into the training room where they were just breaking up from having a company lunch. And, the employees sat down together. They had a nice meal. They chatted, they talked, they celebrated. It was, just before the fall of the year, so the kids are going back to school. It was they just built a family environment. So you've got to hire right. You got to terminate fast. If you've got an employee who's a complainer, who doesn't understand the vision, who's drawing people down, you can't let that bad apple stay on your payroll. And figuring out how to let people go artfully is a tough skill, but you got to figure it out. So you got to train, you got to delegate, you got to have career paths. One of the things I think we make a mistake on is that we think when we ask somebody to do something new or different that we need to promote them, we need to give them more money. I don't know that that's always the case. You can just say, find a person who's got the right personality and say, how would you like to get out of the pharmacy 2 hours every Thursday and go call on doctors? You don't need to pay them more to do that. Some people will say, hey, that's better than a raise to be able to get out of the pharmacy for a couple hours. So find your people, give them different tasks. Everybody's not the quarterback. Everybody's not the center. Everybody's not the punter. Find different jobs for the different personalities and characteristics. And the pharmacies that I see that are super successful, have figured out how to do that. Those are people skills. Those aren't clinical skills. Does that make sense?
It does.
So you want to hear number 3?
I do.
Okay. This is perhaps the most obvious, but you have to run a well-oiled machine. It's got to be, you got to have your ducks in a row. You got to have job descriptions. You got to have tasks, assignments. You got to have work schedules. You got to have goals. You've got to not make mistakes. And, this is the thing that I think is easiest for most detail-oriented pharmacists, is to put together those processes. But there's nothing that can replace being able to fill prescriptions fast, accurately. That's the core skill. If you can't do that, nothing else you do matters. And, fortunately, there's all kinds of technology that can help with that. And, the wise purchase of technology and the utilization of technology in the pharmacy, those things need to be done. Again, what kind of technology will be dependent on where you think you want to go and what you want to do. But, I don't know that everybody needs a robot. I think everybody needs a pill counter. I think everybody at this point in time needs to be seriously thinking about convenience or pouch packaging as well. So, those are some of the things that will help you run that well-oiled machine. Your pharmacy system, I just creating a PowerPoint presentation today to give to a company that's kind of new to the industry. And it was amazing to me to realize how many things a pharmacy management system needs to do, and to try to document all of those. So you've got to be able to use all the tools that you've already bought. And, too many times people have a powerful point of sale system that they never look at those reports, and they're not trying to figure out how to create a loyalty program that does anything other than give points for people for buying what they were already going to buy. But those point of sale systems have the ability to create, lists and reports that can help you figure out how to take people who aren't buying anything in the front end, just buying prescriptions, and, put together a promotion and a program that's custom to them. You've got to get people to shop the front end. I mean, just has to happen. I don't care whether you've got a very clinically oriented pharmacy or one that's selling gifts and toys. You got to boost that front end. So a well-oiled machine is number 3.
Number 4. What's number 4?
Reminds me of the old Johnny Carson show with you're not old enough to remember Johnny Carson.
Yes, I am. Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon. I used to watch it.
So number 4 is be a people person. I think we've chatted a little bit about that already. Pharmacy is a people business. And if you can't make people like you, you probably ought to be working as a researcher in some pharmaceutical company, because it's if people don't come into the store and feel a vibe, and they have to know that the staff likes each other. If there's tension and anxiety and angst between staff and the owner, if people on your team don't know how to deal with difficult customers, and heaven knows we get a lot of those now, you have to be a people person, and you have to surround yourself with people who know how to do that. That doesn't mean everybody on your pharmacy is going to be the happy-go-lucky person. Right. Somebody who's taking care of the reconciliation programs and the bookkeeping, they don't need to deal with the public. But, anybody who's facing the public needs to know and understand that this is a people business. My fourth child, my third daughter, in 1995 graduated from high school and took a job with a restaurant company called Joe's Crab Shacks. And I don't know whether you've seen those. I don't see many of them anymore. But I was impressed with 2 things. Before they let her greet a customer, they made her go to a 12-hour training course, 3 or 4 hours a day for 3 or 4 days. And she came home with 2 things that have constantly impressed me. And she said, number one is that they told the servers that when you bring the check out, draw a little smiley face on it, say thanks and sign your name, and kneel down at face level to the customer and hand it to them. And evidently they had proven that if you did that, your tips go up by 20%. Simple little things. And the point being is that pharmacies need to train their staffs to deal with people, not just how to do calculations and operate the machine. Mm-hmm. The other thing, and I actually have used it in several of my CE presentations, they went through this scenario about everybody knows the golden rule, treat other people like you want to be treated. And they taught her that that's fine from a moral sense. If you want to go to heaven, treat other people like you want to be treated. But if you want to be successful as a server, you need to treat people like they want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And the way that struck home to me, and Todd, you've traveled enough a lot. I can remember, being out on the road 3-4 days, driving all over the place, and going into a restaurant at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, all by myself. And the server wants to come over and ask me what I want to drink, and then they go away and they come back, and all I want to do is order a hamburger and a soda, Yep. and if they could read that and get me my meal 3 minutes faster, their tip would be bigger than doing the normal process. So you have to learn to read people. Is Mrs. Jones in a good mood today? Does she want to talk, or does she want to be left alone? Hi, good to see you. And here's your medication. So treat people like you need to be a people person. You need to treat people like they need to be treated. And that's not the same to everybody all the time.
Yep.
Here's my favorite one, which I think dovetailed where we started, is do something else exceptionally well. So very early in my road trips, my wife, who has always traveled with me, was amazed at the number of different things an independent pharmacy can have. Mm-hmm. We've seen them with soda fountains. We've seen them with restaurants. We've seen them with clothing stores. We've seen them with mail offices and post office things. We've seen them with jewelry stores. The point is that one of my favorites is a guy, the first one I saw, who had a little homemade fudge stand in his pharmacy. The point being is that if you're filling prescriptions quickly and accurately, there's nothing that you're doing that is worth talking about. And so pharmacies have an opportunity to do something else, run an exceptional pharmacy, and then do something else exceptionally well. Be really notable. First road trip pharmacy I visited was Butler's Pharmacy in Point Pleasant, New Jersey. Cute, big pharmacy. And their tagline is, "We go to Butler's for our gifts." So they were a big gift store. And that's kind of a traditional place for pharmacies, all the way to the fudge. And then clearly into DME. I did a project for a couple of years with a franchise program that puts people in the home infusion business. You can go anywhere you want. I'm constantly intrigued by, up in our mall, we have a lady who runs a store for water. And I keep thinking, what a great side business for a pharmacy. Water is our most basic healthcare requirement. Mm-hmm. So she sells filters and all that kind of stuff. And she runs a nice little business in the mall just selling water. And it's amazing how many different directions she's gone. With the COVID, I'm constantly amazed that we haven't done more with air purifiers. Mm-hmm. And, those kinds of things that, that fit into the healthcare motif. So you avoid, keep the bugs out of your house with the blue lights. And I'm not seeing anybody doing that kind of stuff. And I think that there's huge opportunities in that area. So do something else, healthcare related primarily. But if you've got a passion for something else, follow that passion and do that as well. So do something else exceptionally well. In that regard, I guess I want to say two subtexts. Doing these other things requires something more than standing behind a counter and having people walk in and say, hey, can you fill this? Mm-hmm. It requires proactive involvement. And we oftentimes call that sales or salesmanship. And that's a tough thing to get most pharmacists to do. I like to take the pressure off the selling by saying show and tell, don't sell. So your job as a pharmacist, as a healthcare professional, is to explain to people why this will help them and then let them make a choice. Don't feel like you need to sell it today. My first thing I learned as a sales rep was it wasn't until the third time I called on the drugstore that anybody talked to me. So first time in, yeah, I'm too busy. I don't want to talk to you. Leave a card and kind of judge whether or not I, was rude or not. The second time I come in, I might get a, yeah, good to see you again. And the third time I came in, they said, hey, this guy's for real. As they start talking to them. I think the same thing's true with pharmacists when we start recommending products to them or services to them. If they don't buy the first time, we get embarrassed and awkward. And my point is, don't expect to sell the first time. Your job is to show and tell, explain, and people will buy later once they have trust in you and once they're more comfortable with the situation. So, and the other thing is, you can't do 5 different directions. You have to figure out something to specialize in that's going to be an anchor for you. Get that working and then go someplace else. And so do something else exceptionally well.
Yeah, I think what you referenced in that don't sell, show and tell is the keyword education, and pharmacists are natural educators anyway.
Yes.
Take advantage of your supplement business, take advantage of, that the pharmacist owner that concentrated on purified water and what water does for your body. There's a lot of education that goes into that, and you're most likely a respected individual of the community anyway. So I think there's a trust level. Pharmacists are second, if not first, most trusted healthcare professional in place. There's reasons behind that. So take advantage of that and educate, and then you won't have to sell.
And certainly make sure that you're educating on stuff that you believe in. So yes. It's got to be valid. It's got to be helpful. The easiest one for me to recognize that, but for still surprised the number of pharmacies who don't go gangbusters on immunizations, and above and beyond flu shots. I mean, that's just a natural thing for a pharmacy to do. So anyhow, the other one is one that I don't know that I've ever heard anybody talk about in an organized fashion, and that is the golden opportunity the typical independent pharmacy has to be the local media guru. COVID had a lot of people jumping into this for the first time, but I maintain that opportunity's been there for years. So the CVS pharmacist is not talking to the newspaper or the radio station. That just isn't happening. And there's things that happen in the news every day that have something to do with healthcare and medications. And establishing a relationship with the newspaper, the local radio station, you're not going there to get featured on TV but it's what you really want to have happen. But you just really want to let them know, hey, I saw something in the news today, about the price of insulin, or I saw something in the news today about Mark Cuban's cost plus drug company, or I saw something in the news today about drug shortages. Yep. If you ever want to have anybody to talk with you about what that means for the people in our town, I'd be happy to do that. And once you get on the radio or have an article written in the newspaper where they feature you once or twice, you become the easy place for them to go. Because the last thing the local newspaper wants to do is to run the AP story that came out on the newswire. They'd love to have an angle for what that means in Prescott, Arizona, where I live. So there's opportunities to do that. It doesn't take much time. You already have the expertise. It just takes the uncomfortable reach out to the newspaper and let them know that you're there to talk. And that's a simple email. Say, you get the go to the web, you find the editor, and you say, Tom, I couldn't help but notice on the drive into work this morning that, they're talking about Mark Cuban's drug company and PBMs. And if you want to talk to me about what that means for the people in our town, I'm happy to talk. First time you do it, nothing's going to happen. The second time you do it, the guy might respond and say, yeah, we're already full. It's too late. Third time you do it, you finally get to talk to somebody. And before you know it, 2 or 3 months later, you're in the newspaper routinely.
Yep. That's
and I've seen that happen. I mean, there's just people who make that happen. So number 7, this is the one that's probably the hardest for an entrepreneurial pharmacist to accept, but you can't do it all. You got to get help. And I'm talking about help above and beyond the staff that you have in your pharmacy. Most people have an accountant and a tax person, a lawyer, because they know they're not experts in that, but then they try to be a marketing person and think that they're going to be good at that. They're going to try to be a business, be a business coach. There's companies out there that can help you do these things better than you can do them. And marketing is my hot button. That's my hot spot. Marketing is more than advertising. Marketing is thinking and planning and figuring out what new service I'm going to do, what service would be appropriate in the community, what skills do I have, and then figuring out how do you approach it? How do you get trained? How do you bring it in? And then how do you tell people about it? And the perfect example for me is I've talked to dozens of pharmacists who say, I tried MedSync, but it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to dozens of pharmacists who've tried it and made it work. And the difference is the approach that they took. How did they approach people? How did they explain it? How did they package it? How did they figure out who to start with? And, your wholesaler, your buying group, and then entrepreneurs of all sorts in the industry are there to help do these things. You're familiar with many of them who are on the social networks. You figure out how to help with, PG testing or nutritional supplements or just TV advertising. Don't be afraid to hire somebody to help you do these kinds of things. The classic thing with advertising is you have to figure out something important to say, and then you have to say it well. And important to say is not, we're fast, friendly, and convenient, or we've been here for 50 years. You have to figure out what you're going to really say that matters and sinks through and dives ahead. And that's a skill that you don't get that in pharmacy school. So, professionals who can help you with marketing, advertising, slogan building, logos, all those kinds of things, that all matters. And so get help for that kind of stuff if you possibly can. So that's my WOD for today.
That's terrific. I appreciate you sharing your insights with the listeners. That you're listening out there and you think of, well, how do I do this? Do it in small steps. You don't have to be perfect before you launch a Instagram station or even a TikTok. My goodness, there's Phil is my pharmacist. Phil Crowley is this TikTok internet star, and he's a community pharmacy owner. And he does a TikTok every day. He's putting content out, but that's not the way it started. He was only doing like one every other week or one every 2 weeks. And then he started getting more used to it. And that information source, the media piece, you can start by doing it on your own Facebooks and on your own, social environments to become that resource. Even if the local news doesn't pick you up, you can do it from your own means as a media source and as a trusted source, and then rinse and repeat, or reach out to one of your pharmacy technicians, or reach out to one of your shift pharmacists, or someone that has that look and that personality that may already be good at social media. And like you're saying, Bruce, now you're reaching to other experts or other people who are good at it.
And you're building a team and you're having fun.
Absolutely.
You're spot on there. And thanks for, the social media thing always is the third or fourth way I go. And that's because I'm old. But it needs to be done, and everybody needs to do it. And I think doing it well is escaping many people who are still doing it on their own, but it needs to be genuine and it needs to be you. And that's how you communicate to people.
Exactly. I've appreciated working with you over the years, Bruce. I think 2023 is going to bring in not only some new challenges, but some new opportunities to our community pharmacies. And I'm glad that Pharmacy Crossroads is a way to come to the crossroads of the business of pharmacy and use that place where I envision 4 lanes of 4 decisions. And Pharmacy Crossroads is never just one way of executing on something. It's a meshing of ideas. It's a cultivating of people, and it's bringing together this community, which is the center of what is community pharmacy. And like I said, I've so much appreciated not only your wisdom, but the time that you've put into this publication and your environment. So thank you for that.
Well, and just to make sure everybody's clear, the Crossroads podcast is different from this because I'm actually talking to a smart person who's doing something. So I get to play your role in the Pharmacy Crossroads podcast thing. So I'm almost always talking to an owner who's doing something remarkable, and learning from others is kind of the way we grow. So that's the idea behind the show.
Well, thank you. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you're a pharmacy owner and you're listening to this and you think there's some value to it, please share it with another pharmacy owner. That in it of itself is the basis of community and helping each other to be successful. And Bruce, we're looking forward to more from you in the upcoming new year. And I thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you.